Good afternoon and welcome to the Insighters, offering insight into today's most pressing issues. I'm your host, Maria Armoudian. In this hour, Obama and the strategy with Turkey, Armenia, Russia, and the Caucasus. We're joined by experts in the region. Aram Hamparian is the director of the Armenian National Committee, and we have Harut Sasunian, who is the publisher of a paper called the California Courier. Harut Sasunian, let's bring you on. You are the publisher of the California Courier. You go to this region pretty regularly. You've been studying this region for a while. What's your response to all this?
Well, Turkey has been playing a lot of political games in recent months, mostly to deflect President Obama's intention and campaign promise to recognize the Armenian Genocide. And they've made all sorts of motions and talked a good game in terms of giving a false impression to Washington and the rest of the world that they are willing to establish diplomatic relations and open the border. However, after months and months of negotiation, nothing is happening. No border is opened. If the Turks are really serious in opening the border, they can do that in a very short time, not in months or years. Obviously, their intent is otherwise. They're not honest in their declared intentions. What they want is to use the excuse of the opening of the border in order to maximize concessions, to get maximum concessions from Armenia on the Nagorno-Karabakh issue in order to appease their ally Azerbaijan, and also to get concessions from Armenia on not pursuing the genocide acknowledgement and several other issues like the territorial integrity of Turkey, the old recognizing the borders, etc. So this is all a ploy, try to get maximum benefit for Turkey in terms of PR, to undermine President Obama's intended declaration on April 24, and Armenia is being pressured from every corner. The only major disagreement I have with the analysis that we just heard is the factor, the Russian factor in all this. For a long time, this analysis was correct that Russia was at loggerheads with the West over Armenia, but in recent months and years, there's been a tremendous shift in Russia's interests for two reasons. One, Russia has bought a lot of the industries, rail transport, energy, and other areas of Armenia's industry. So Russia is a major economic power in Armenia, major owner of industries in Armenia. So when the border is opened, Russia will benefit tremendously in terms of financial gain. The second reason that has changed recently is the Georgian-Russian conflict and the war last August. And what Russia wants to do now is wants to make sure that the border between Turkey and Armenia is open, so Georgia's significance, geopolitical significance, will be reduced, diminished. So a lot of the goods will flow to the region, not as much through Georgia as through the Turkish-Armenian border. So Russia has a tremendous amount of influence over Armenia. It's an ally of Armenia.
Harut Sasunian, two things I want you to back up to. One was your assertion that this is just a ploy by Turkey, which I don't think Riva is necessarily disputing. But the question is it working?
Well, it has worked so far very well, because as we saw, Obama, when he was in Ankara, he very carefully tiptoed around his pledge. To a degree, it's understandable that he's sort of cornered being a guest in Ankara and not wishing to offend his hosts. But on the other hand, what he said is very significant. He repeated word for word the Turkish propaganda line that I do not want to meddle in Armenian-Turkish relations while the two countries are negotiating and making good progress, which is exactly the Turkish line, that third countries should not interfere in and make no statements on the Armenian genocide as long as Turkey and Armenia are negotiating. So the Turks have succeeded in convincing President Obama to stay out of it. And we'll see what President Obama does with it.
And then I want to get your response to something else that Riva Bala mentioned, which is she said that perhaps what is good, what the diaspora is pushing and what the Armenian lobby is pushing is not necessarily good for Armenia. What's your response to that? And perhaps that's when we bring Aram Hamparian in, who is part of the Armenian lobby. So I'm sorry, Harut Sassouni, I didn't mean to distract you, but what would you say to that assertion?
Yeah, well, that's an often made remark, which is not true, because the Armenian people's interests are one and the same all over the world, no matter where they are. And if anything, we can explain possibly a difference between what some of the leaders in Armenia think and their analysis versus what the people in Armenia and around the world think. So there may be a difference between government versus people, and not necessarily people in diaspora. People in Armenia also have similar concerns about doing away with Armenia's national interest in terms of security for Armenia, and the Nagorno-Karabakh territorial concessions, the demands for the recognition of the genocide. Those are all universally acclaimed Armenian interests, and there's no difference there.
Aram Hamparian, let's bring you in. Are you with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Aram Hamparian, tell me, and our listeners and our other guests here, what difference would it make for Armenia proper to have this genocide recognized?
I think it would make Armenia a safer place. The fact that it's bordered by an unrepentant and very heavily armed perpetrator of genocide is not a recipe for Armenia's security. As importantly, it would make the world safer, because the precedent of a genocide committed with impunity, without consequence, makes the world less safe. It makes genocide more likely. It's no coincidence that today Turkey is one of only a handful of countries that still sells weapons to the Sudanese government, which is committing a genocide as we speak in Darfur. So I think it's a question of making Armenia safe and making the world safer from future genocides. And frankly, I'm a little concerned about discussing the question of genocide, or the issue of genocide, as a political or geopolitical issue. It's really not. Genocide is an issue of morality. It's a moral challenge of our age, of the 21st century, to end genocide, and we're never going to get there if it's discussed as a commodity to be sold or traded or retreated from under pressure. If we had this discussion about apartheid in South Africa 30 years ago, about why it's difficult to stop it or oppose it, we might still have it today. God knows how long slavery would have stayed in place if people had, debated it endlessly as a political question instead of a moral question. Ending genocide is a moral issue. It's a moral issue. It's at a much higher plane than politics. And what Russia does, Armenia does, Turkey does, is really secondary, is really not even relevant to, does America stand against genocide? The answer should be yes. The answer should be yes, without a doubt. We'll see where he goes. If he views the issue at the level of American values, he'll honor his pledge and recognize the genocide. If he allows Turkey to drag America's discourse on genocide down to the level of threats, then he'll shy away from his pledge, and that's unfortunate. I just want to offer one thought, which is, as an Armenian, on the day before we mark the Armenian genocide, to hear about how Armenia is poor and weak and therefore needs to remain silent on the crime of genocide is really terrible, because Armenia is today poor and weak in large part because of genocide. Genocide is not just about killing, it's about power, and about the greater imbalance in power that Turkey imposed upon Armenia. And they take advantage of that today by re-victimizing Armenia and saying that you need to not only have suffered genocide, you need to remain silent on this subject. And this is wrong. I mean, the fact that genocide is still considered today a political question is something that we need to transcend as a society and as an international community. And we hope that the President will help us do that tomorrow. We hope the Congress will do that as well.
Well, we are out of time, but I'd like to thank all three of you. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Aram Hamparian, thank you so much. Harut Sassounian, appreciate you so much. Aram Hamparian is with the Armenian National Committee, and Harut Sassounian is the publisher of the California Courier. When we come back, we'll look at the scam behind student loans and the effect it's having on people's lives and the future of the U.S. Stay tuned.
Join host Henry Walton every Thursday night for the Labor Review at 8 p.m. for an insightful look at U.S. labor policy from a grassroots perspective.
She was doing her job over at Caltrans as a union representative, passing out flyers